Let's welcome to the stage Rob Corddry.
Thank you.
Well,
Interesting choice of episode for a Google Talk, I think.
actually, not really comfortable with sitting right there. I'd prefer if you could sit right here.
Oh, is this your spot?
That was my spot. I
Gotcha.
don't know
No, I get it.
No.
I get it.
Fine. I just wanted to make sure that the YouTube audience gets a clear look. So,
Here we are.
Children's Hospital. For the YouTube audience, we just aired what is soon to be coming out, if not already out, the third season of Children's Hospital, which is about to come out. The first and second seasons on DVD. And we have this here, Rob Corddry. Could you just kind of wrap up, like, what the hell is going on there? Well, explain Children's Hospital to the audience, for those who hadn't seen it before today.
Well, Children's Hospital is, it's sort of like Grey's Anatomy. It's exactly like Grey's Anatomy, except it's 11 minutes long. But, you know, the idea is that these are beautiful people having sex with each other in the workplace. But in our case, the workplace is a children's hospital. So.
So, as we saw in the episode, your character has a very distinct look and feel apart from any of the other ones. Can you kind of go in? Just who do you play? What's your role?
Yeah, I play Blake Downs. He is a clown, as we saw, by race. Some would even say perhaps by species. In our world, clowns are sort of, they're really fighting for their rights and acceptance, and it's been a hard road for them. Even among the clowns themselves, apparently there is, we'll explore in another episode, there are circus clowns and there are city clowns. And there are rifts between those groups as well. But basically, the whole idea behind Blake Downs was that in all these hospital shows, ER or Grey's Anatomy, there's always a jerk. Like one of them is always... like it was Isaiah Washington on Grey's Anatomy. Actually turned out to be a jerk in real life, too. The guy with the red hair from Fame on ER. What was, who I'm talking about? He's bald now. He was sort of the jerk on ER. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be funny if the jerk on our show wore clown makeup? And I was right, see?
Brilliant. Well, I mean, how did you mentioned these other hospital shows, and then you tried to give us the one-liner pitch for this show, although really didn't capture. How did you come up with this idea, and what it eventually became?
It's actually like it kind of a horrible story, but it's also kind of the perfect scenario with which an idea could come to you. It was in the middle of the writer's strike a couple years ago. Nobody could write anything, movies or TV, or act in anything because no one was going to cross a picket line, except for the web, right? So I had nothing to do, basically, for 6 months. So I made it my job to be productive about productivity. Like, I learned basically in that time how to streamline my life, my workflow, if you will, and to create a more creative environment for ideas to come. And right around that time, my daughter, we dislocated a ligament in my daughter's arm. Beating the crap out of her. Don't tell me how to parent. And we took her to the emergency room in LA at Children's Hospital, and turns out it was a very easy thing to fix, but it was a really, really kind of traumatizing experience bringing your child to the emergency room, especially to Children's Hospital, because there are hurt children and sick children there, and very scared parents. And another detail I noticed was that everything in a children's hospital is a little bit smaller. That was perhaps the only quote-unquote funny thing I took away from it. Like, it made me think, right? That's it. And the IV bottles were smaller, and the gurneys were smaller, and everything was just smaller. And somewhere, I think on the ride home, I had the idea. And I really don't remember the epiphany or the moment. So that's the long version of my child abuse story.
Well, but it's clearly a response to the medical dramas that are on TV as well. So, I mean, were you just engrossed in these? You seem to point or reference to so many of them.
Not really. I mean, I was a big fan of St. Elsewhere growing up. It's one of my favorite shows ever because it was so weird. But do you remember that show? Does anybody ever watch St. Elsewhere? It's revealed at the end of the show. You've been watching this for 7 years. It's revealed at the end of the show that the entire series took place in the mind of an autistic kid. And depending on your attitude, you either love that or give that the double finger. So anyway, we won't argue about that here because that's a whole other talk. But my wife was a fan of Grey's Anatomy for a while, so I would kind of like watch it over her shoulder. Every time I would look up at the TV, invariably something crazy was happening. That show's MO is just to jump the shark in every episode so that they're jump the shark proof. So that's sort of where it started, but also like now, I mean, we've sort of run out of Grey's Anatomy jokes, and I don't watch the show really. I was inspired a lot by House this present season, which is a really good show, although it's more of like a cop show or a detective show than anything else. But we more like just poke fun at TV drama in general.
Yeah, well, it has its own platform to stand on. It's not, it's not just a replica of what's going out there in TV, but it takes a lot. I mean, the cinematography is actually really brilliant. It's really well executed.
Thank you.
I know that
that's me.
That's all you. Is it that you have just noticed the trends that are happening in the drama, like just the shots and the angles? I mean, you really kind of nail it on a lot of those.
Well, we have a great DP, the guy that shoots Entourage, though that's not maybe the best resume point. Oh, it's so gorgeous, Entourage. But yeah, that was sort of our thing from the very beginning. When we were on the web, our first season was 5-minute episodes, and it was only on the internet. And I wanted it to look as good as possible. I wanted it to look just like a TV show, to sort of stand above the normal everyday web video, but to also look like one of these shows.
Well, but that brings up a great point. You started this on the web, and in fact, you started on the web with high production value, and then it got picked up. Well, what actually happened in 2007 with this?
Well, in a nutshell, during the strike, these studios had created these digital arms to do something with their time, basically. And they were just giving people some money to shoot these little shorts, hoping that it was going to be very cheap development for them. And I believe we're only one of 2 web series that actually made it to television. So they've since kind of abandoned that whole idea. These arms are like ghost towns on the lot.
So the program was almost a piloting through the web.
Yes,
experience.
Yeah, it was very much that.
And you kind of, you say they may have called it something of a failure, but it seems like it's at least proving itself to some extent.
Well, it was a success for us.
Yeah.
It was a success for us, and there was a Lisa Kudrow show. I don't know what it was called.
That's not important.
It was, yeah. But yeah, it was. They got on TV too, but we were, we just started pitching it around, and basically we were in a very, very low stakes bidding war between Comedy Central and Adult Swim, and here we are.
$20 later? And,
yeah, exactly. I am literally 1,000 now.
Well, do you have an opinion on that way of gaining interest before, in the pilot phase? Do you think there's a future in that? Even if they close down this first generation of that, do you think that actually may have laid the groundwork for what TV shows may look in the future?
Well, everybody... What do you mean, in terms of
piloting on the web first,
yeah,
and seeing response?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's trying to subvert the pilot process because it's a terrible process. You spend millions of dollars and a lot of resources on something that you're hoping is going to appeal to absolutely everyone, which is impossible. And then they just kind of throw them all out, choose 3, and they lose all this money in the end. So everybody's trying to subvert that. And this is just one way they tried to do it. Right now, I know pilot presentations are very popular. People are just shooting 15-minute shows on their own and then shopping them around and saying, look, we've got this already, why don't you just pick us up? And that's been, somewhat successful to a degree, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that there was something about your show in particular that made it catch fire on the web first? I mean, I feel like hearing the pitch for this and then putting that into a boardroom before you've got something behind it could be a little hard to swallow at times.
Yeah, no, this is not pitchable really at a TV network. Yeah, I would say for the most part it's the cast. It's a pretty great cast for a little internet video. And that I'd say probably at the same time Dr. Horrible was released at the same time, and that was also had very high production values, and that caught people's eye, so to speak.
I was going to mention the Neil Patrick Harris production, 2007, the Dr. Horrible sing-along something or other. Just absolute absurdity for something like 2 hours when you put it all together.
Yeah.
So did you know about that effort going on at the same time? Did these things just start to happen in Hollywood or in the community?
Yeah, I believe that happened right before us. So yeah, we were definitely pointing to it as an example of, success on the internet. Yeah. But it was never anything more than that.
Yeah. Well, you say this is not pitchable, and you also mentioned the cast, but you bring in tremendously popular guest comedians and just guest actors who I actually want to hear it. How do you pitch this show to them? Because you had Sarah Silverman. You can name some of the actors you brought on, but you've had actually really considerably big comedians, but also just general actors.
Just good actors too. Yeah, Ed Begley Jr., Ernie Hudson. Jeff Ross, Sarah Silverman, Stephen Root, Bruce Davidson, a lot of really cool people.
So the comedians I could maybe get, but what is the pitch for this show? Is this what you gave us? They're like, yeah, it sounds great, we'll be right down.
Well, so now people kind of know the show, and we're starting to get calls from people. We just got a call today, my producing partner, from Haley Joel Osment's agent. And he's like, he's a big fan of the show. I'd really like to get you guys in a room together. And he's like, we'll put him on the list. Like, there's no reason to get us in a room together. We'd love to have him on the show. Like, you want to do lunch? Like, he was like wheeling and dealing to get him on this 15-minute show. A good agent, I guess. But the season before this one, we had, like I said, Ernie Hudson on, and he was great. He's the Black Ghostbuster. And Winston Zeddemore Jr. You're welcome. And we put him through the ringer. Like, he was in a hot operating room for 14 hours with a break for lunch with a rig, dressed up in like this stunt rig that looked like he had a pole sticking through his body, attached to a kid who was also stuck through the pole. Horrible, sweating. He was wearing a sweater. It was terrible. And he was such a good sport, and we were all very wary and appreciative. And another actress went up to him just to make conversation, to make small talk, and she said, "So, how did you get to be on this show?" And he goes, "I don't know. My agent said it was hip."
Nice. What was the name of that episode? It was hilarious.
I don't remember what the episode. The titles are just after the fact. I don't know.
Anyway, it's two dudes impaled on a flagpole. I don't know how much that brings up on YouTube, but
it's on the DVD.
It's on the DVD. It's season 2, I believe. Well, that brings it up. I mean, the content of the show is just wild. The tagline I think that Cartoon Network uses for it, that Adult Swim, is drama, sex, racism. Did you hear? Have you heard this?
No.
It's on the tagline of every one of your videos. It's I feel like wraps it up.
I'd watch that.
Yeah. But it's so blatant. I mean, how do you approach these topics, and how do you make them as funny as you do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we don't sit in a room and go, you know what? We're gonna nail racism today. It's just really what's funny to us and what we laugh at. We definitely don't say this will be edgy and controversial or whatever. I find racial humor very funny, and it really makes me laugh. And so that's why it's so funny. We have another episode that has racial a racial theme to it, and we played both of those episodes. We forgot that they were both racial themed, and we played them for like a bunch of industry people in LA, like agents and producers, and it was like in that context, the worst idea in the world.
Well, I love that the person who I think feels, like actually recognizes that racism exists is the clown. It's like the clowns all feel like the world is racist against them.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is.
But nobody else really acknowledges the other racism that goes on.
Well, also, like, who here likes clowns? Zero. One dude.
One brave person.
One dude, the guy that came in late and had to move all the way to the middle of the aisle, pissing everybody else off, likes clowns. I was watching you, buddy.
How many people like that dude? Yeah.
Yeah. No, clowns, this generation... clowns missed us.
Completely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's but what is with this? You say he's like clown by race. I don't ever see him without his makeup, and there are a few others like that in the show.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really answered that question, but I can imagine a world in which that makeup is just part of him. Like he doesn't take it off because it is on his face. The blood on his scrubs is also part of his clown costume. There's one 2-second bit in the first season where you see me, put my hand in fake blood at the beginning of the day and wipe it on my shirt. So
it's like coffee.
It's just part of the fun for him. Just bringing laughter to the children.
Yeah. Well, you work with a lot of child actors, obviously. Which, child actors can run the gamut, but these seem to do pretty well, the ones in this show.
They're great.
Are you talking to their mothers before this? How does that integrate with the show, considering the content?
Yeah, it's, well, here's the thing. We've been very lucky, and a lot of these kids are actually very good. That girl that got pinched in here, horrible. Terrible. We had to cut around her. She had a much bigger bit. Awful. Kept looking at the camera. We do a bit about that in a future episode that she kept looking at the camera. And for a show called Children's Hospital, there are very few children in it because I don't enjoy them. And the bummer about working with kids is not the kids, because usually, for the most part, sometimes they're smart, kind of like gifted, intelligent children. It's their parents that I want to murder. They're usually failed actors themselves, and there's, an agenda going on, and it's pretty sad. Yeah.
Well, although I'm sure you love your children, your hatred for children. All right. You kill a lot of kids on this show. They die at a pretty steady rate.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the operating principle behind you as opposed to literally the operating principles behind you and the other doctors on the show?
Well, my doctor employs the healing power of laughter, which is largely unsuccessful because it doesn't exist. There's a moment, I think it's already run in the season, where I kill another kid, because my, balloon animal technique doesn't work, and I say to Megan Mullally's character, who's like the chief, I say to her, sometimes I wonder why the American Medical Association even recognizes the healing power of laughter, and she's like, they don't, never have.
Speaking of, it has these moments where you're just laughing uncontrollably, but often at subjects that, you kind of have to take a double take. One of which, by far, is the way you make fun of handicapped people in situations. And it makes you laugh just viscerally at the handicapped people in the show, the way they're portrayed, but in a very unique way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well,
in the response you've had.
I would disagree and say that we never make fun of handicapped people. I would never want to make fun of handicapped people. That's not funny to me. However, one of our characters is severely handicapped. She also happens to be the most powerful person in the hospital and the object of everyone's sexual desire. And also, it's just a parody of the Laura Innes character on ER, who I'm not sure what her ailment was, but she used crutches. And apart from that, the fun for me is really just making Megan Mullally look so terrible. She's so gorgeous, and she wears no makeup, these really thick glasses, a terrible man's wig. And sometimes I forget, like when she is leaving for the day, that she is so gorgeous. But that's it. I mean, we don't. I don't traffic in, making fun of handicapped people. That's just. That's a fool's errand.
Well, yeah. It was. It's brilliantly done and so I wasn't sure if you'd had response, positive or negative. Once people actually see the way that you involve them in the jokes. Have you heard any response particularly? I actually heard a boo in one of your interviews when you said handicap. I was like, I watched the show.
Oh yeah, that was silly. I did a Conan interview, and I was on Conan. I made fun of the whole Tracy Morgan thing, where I said if my son came home and told me he wanted to be a clown, I would stab him in the face. And then later on, I addressed what you just said. He said, Megan Mullally's character is, ugly, and she's also handicapped. And I was like, yes, she's severely handicapped on the show. And somebody boos. I was like, one person. But I was like, first of all, I just wanted to, just sit them down and ask them where that boo came from exactly. Not sure why that gets a boo. But then I said, and Conan cut me off. I said, you know what? He brings up a good point. If my son came home and he wanted to be handicapped.
That got a couple more boos. Well, just so you know, we will be taking questions during the last quarter hour of this. So if you have questions, feel free to begin lining up in just a few minutes. Again, you've got Megan Mullally, you've got a bunch of very beautiful and very talented, hilarious actors. Was the response to this, especially in the pilot phase, just? Sorry, if you don't know Megan Mullally, she was actually. I found a somewhat annoying character on Will and Grace. She had a really annoying voice. She was the one with the super high-pitched voice. You either loved her or you hated her. And you saw that, which side I came down on. Well, Megan Mullally, but a talented actress. And yet she's playing this ridiculous role. So again, is people just responding to this idea? They're like, yes, you're just nailing the zeitgeist right now. What's...
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, Megan Mullally just personally is just really game. She's just really she's very funny, and she just loves working. And she just responds to this kind of thing. She loves wigs too. Not kidding.
Into that.
Won't do anything without wearing a wig.
Awesome.
It's very funny.
Well, so there are a few recurring elements of the show. I just wanted to hear if they had any interesting origins, or if you can just describe them a little bit more. One is that there's a voice on the hospital intercom that always makes some off-putting announcement. I don't know if you have any examples that come to mind, but where did that theme come from?
Yeah, there's a Michael Cera. Actually, you heard one here. Michael Cera does the voice of the PA announcer. You never see him, but he just does and the voice of the PA announcer is. Never very relevant to what's going on in the hospital. Like this particular one in this show, I don't know if you heard the final bit of the joke. It was, attention, they always start, attention hospital staff, me so horny. That sounds racist, but it's true. And we now have a Twitter handle, sure, called @attention staff, and we just do a bunch of those a day. It's probably the closest to Airplane that we get, because there is it's a very similar kind of humor. Very absurd, anything goes, screw continuity kind of thing, but we're also very wary of that too, like if something is too close to Airplane, and that's definitely as close as we get. And also like making fun of the medical show genre is also kind of dangerous too, because then you run into scary movie territory, or not another teen movie, those movies that are so tired. You don't want to just have to stick to all those tropes.
Yeah. Well, you got some really hilarious running themes through there. One of them that it's only a 10, 11 minute show, and yet at the beginning of every episode, you in the last episode, and then at the end, you're you kind of give some sort of wrap up. I don't remember the show that always resonates with me, but it's like someone, show from the 80s. Someone's talking in their head and kind of wrapping up everything, but it didn't wrap up anything. Actually, it usually made the situation much worse, whatever their explanation was. Is anything coming behind those that something you're sticking with, or are you just kind of toying with these little elements?
No, I mean her last monologue there. She's walking down the hall is a perfect example of sort of our philosophy, which is like nothing is wrapped up, the continuity means nothing, and I reserve the right to end the episode when we get to 17 pages. That's it.
And a bow.
Now shoot it.
Well, yeah, so it is 10 minutes long, and that seems to work great for Adult Swim, but is that something inherent about the show now, or do you ever think this could turn into something longer, or if it's more appropriate for shorter? Where's that going?
Now, when it was on the web and it was just 5-minute episodes, I swore I would never bring this to TV. But then I became aware of the 15-minute format. And I said, and it's actually, with commercials, it's 11:15 about. I thought, okay, that's about the right time for this show. Maybe even better than 5 minutes. But I really think like a minute after 11 minutes, and this kind of like joke barrage becomes too much. Nobody wants to watch this for 23 minutes. Like, it's like a joke engine. That's all we're about is jokes. Nothing. We don't care about story or character. We have some semblance of it just to fuel our jokes, and that would get relentless.
Yeah, I think you called it joke-driven, which,
yeah.
I think other examples in pop culture right now, Family Guy, South Park, they're definitely character-driven to some extent, but largely joke-driven.
Mostly animated, yeah. Sure.
And you're taking it to an extreme where not only is it the same kind of absolutely tangents of the absurd, but you try to just make it action-packed. So do you think that's a format that is developing, or is it just working for the way humor is hitting people?
I really don't know. Certain comedies, like 30 Rock, I believe, is almost joke-based, but there is some heart there, and there are real relationships that you care about, unlike my show, and story arcs that mean something. So it's more character and relationship-based, but they kind of hammer you with jokes. And also, like, Arrested Development, I think, was an example of a really hilarious show that didn't make it because it was too joke-based. It was relentless for people. They were like, ugh, too much, for the most part, except for people that are great and smart.
Like everyone here.
And also cool. So, yeah, and it's tough. It's really tough. I can't think of any joke-based movies besides like those parody movies, which are kind of boring.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Arrested Development, which is just a cult favorite at this point. And you also mentioned that Mike Cera is involved in this.
Yeah.
Is he just the announcement? I thought it was a lady.
Of course. Everybody says that.
Poor Mike.
Everybody says that. Like, who's the chick that does your PA announcements?
I was like, what does Michael do?
The chick from Superbad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Everybody asks me, what guest stars do you want to get on the show, and like what's your dream guest star? And really, like, I'm more concerned now with like not casting so many guest stars, but really letting our cast do more, because that's our real asset. But I wouldn't mind getting Mike Cera's face on there somehow, finding out a cool way. And if you have any ideas, so that we can see Michael Cera, that'd be fun.
Well, he's clearly one of the children being operated on, right? That's
sure. That's
he's always.
Or somebody was saying like it's just this like big Samoan dude with Michael Cera's voice. I don't know.
You do have a phenomenal cast, though. Many of them well trained in improv, as you are yourself. So what's the writing process like? How much does that flow into this, or does it at all? Because I know sitcoms often, even if situational comedy, at least in general, fairly scripted.
Yeah, it's pretty tightly scripted. It goes through a really, lengthy revision process, but yeah, it's pretty tightly scripted. That said, it would be silly for me to not allow these brilliant improvisers to do their thing, and I think that's sort of the going philosophy at most TV shows now. You do one on script and then you get one for yourself.
Well, you kind of hinted at the short life of WB 2.0 or Warner Brothers 2.0, I think it was called. But with YouTube, especially putting so many efforts behind original content development for the web, maybe someday it gets on TV, maybe that's never the intention, as you kind of originally planned it to be. Do you have any thoughts around where that could go in the future? Have you been following any web series that you really like or think it could go? No,
I haven't.
No.
But I do think it's interesting that, say, like Netflix is getting into the production game now. They're making original content. These YouTube channels, I mean, who knows what that can become? And a lot of these places are now creating content. I think that's where, somewhere in there lies the missing link. Because everybody's just sort of waiting for somebody else to figure out marrying the TV to the internet. Google, one of them, has made a really valiant effort that people can't wait to see and criticize. Apple is sort of a niche thing for them, but it's really kind of people are waiting, and I believe it is when you can truly interact with a television show as you're watching it and affect the outcome in some way. That's when we have married the two things.
Wow, that's a bold vision of the future.
I think it can be done. Yeah.
Well, you interact with your fans, or at least to some degree. I imagine social networks have had to play into a little bit of the popularity. Have you engaged with your audience at all, or do you pull anything from them or give it back?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I plug my show shamelessly on Twitter, but also we have attention staff, so that's like sort of a Twitter presence for just the show. I always go to #Children's Hospital and just just kind of take the pulse of how people are feeling about the show. And
ever gotten any show ideas or even just bit ideas from the audience?
No,
they suck.
No. Most people are just like, they just quote lines, which is probably the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then there are a couple people that are like, not funny.
Didn't get it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, this world that you described, certainly of reacting in line, it would take some pretty phenomenal improv. I want to ask about your improv in a moment, but tonight you're performing in San Francisco for Sketchfest. This is June 30th for the YouTube audience, but tonight at the Marines Memorial Theater, which is at Sutter and Mason, 8 o'clock. I think there's still tickets, but it's going to be hilarious. Can you talk about what's going to go on tonight, and also just talk about what you've done with improv? Yeah,
we're going to screen a couple episodes, and also our sister show is going to screen a couple episodes. They're called, they haven't aired yet, they're called NTSF SD SUV.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly. It's a National Terrorism Strike Force San Diego Sport Utility Vehicle. And it's basically like we are to, cop shows or 24 or something like that. And so they're going to show a couple of, and we're all friends. They're going to show a couple of episodes. We're going to do a couple of bits. We're going to take questions, get some people up on stage and do some bits with us. It'll be fun. It's a lot of different things going on.
Oh, so Rob Riggle's on that show, and you worked with him on The Daily Show, but you guys are friends outside of that. And did you work together to get both on Cartoon Network, or is this collaboration at all?
I met Rob Riggle and Paul Scheer in 1997 while we were all three of us extras for the Upright Citizens Brigade sketch show on Comedy Central, if you remember that blip in time. Unfortunately, it was a great show. And we were in the audience of one episode called Saigon Suicide Squad. And there was only about 50 of us, and they had to fill a whole theater. So they just moved us to different parts of the theater depending on the shot. And so me and Riggle and Scheer are in every shot and every part of the audience. And it was literally my first time on TV.
Well, how did you get into improv? Because UCB, if you were there at the time, it must have been really early in its life. I think it started in the 90s, right?
Yeah. Well, they were in Chicago in the 90s, and they came up through Improv Olympic and Second City, and they sort of started their own thing, and they came to New York with the express purpose of creating a TV show and building a theater, and they did both. And I heard of them, I was doing really bad sketch comedy in New York, and I heard of them. I heard that they were Andy Richter's sketch group. And I went and saw them. Just so happens that Andy Richter was performing with them that night because he's friends with them. And it really changed my life. I'd never seen anything so funny and so spontaneous and so smart and so crazy and so sort of punk rock. And I know that's weird. When you think of improv, you think of like, making up a song, and it's all very kind of, I don't know.
It's definitely not Whose Line Is It Anyway improv.
Exactly. It's long form improv. It's creating scenes out of nothing and out of just one suggestion, one word, and so I just started taking classes there in the '97 and ended up teaching there and we all sort of, and then that became a place where people would come to get talent, sort of like Second City or the Groundlings or something like that. So, Amy Poehler and Rob Riggle got cast on Saturday Night Live out of that. Ed Helms and I on The Daily Show, and sort of like exploded from there.
They've been a powerhouse of some of the most phenomenal modern comedians. Just from The Daily Show, John Hodgman, Wyatt Cenac, John Oliver, Ed Helms, and Rob Riggle, and you all went through there, as well as one other, Dan Bacadal, which I think... Did Steve Carell do...
Steve Carell was Second City. Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert was Second City. But they're from a few generations before us. They, I think their first TV job was on the Dana Carvey show, if anybody remembers that short-lived experience.
Or if you didn't.
Yeah. It was actually pretty funny, but it was weird.
Yeah.
And that was their first thing.
Especially for like the early 90s. It was really weird.
Very strange. Louis C.K. was one of his first writing jobs on that show.
Well, so, I mean, UCB has been a feeder for talent for, obviously, The Daily Show, Saturday Night Live, some of the great improv out there right now. How did you get your specific role at Daily Show? Because that was just a great run there. I don't know how often you're going back now that you've got your own series, but really great work on The Daily Show.
Oh, thank you. How did
you land that, and what was the experience like?
Oh, well, it was an audition process, and I went through the audition process, but it didn't hurt that Ben Carlin, one of the executive producers there at the time, had come to the UCB theater, and he sort of liked what we were doing there, and so I was sort of on his radar anyway, I guess. So I mostly credit the UCB for that, though. It was like an audition thing, like anything else.
And did that really, whet your chops as a TV-facing comedian? And did you do any writing there? What all were you involved in?
Well, the correspondents have very little to do with writing the in-studio stuff. That's all scripted by the writers and John, mostly John. The field pieces where we go out and interview people are largely written by the correspondents and the producers, as well as improvised. There's a lot, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, they kind of cut back on those a little bit.
Oh, have they?
Well, these are the random pieces where they go and they don't tell the person that they're being interviewed for a comedy bit. And
no, we do. There's no way we can get away with
wow.
No, they know it's The Daily Show.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, I know, they must know the reputation.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, how are you finding these people still who don't know this show?
I mean, everybody wants to be on the TV.
Hey, man, you'll do whatever it takes. You had a really great style there, and I think it's carried through in many of the things I've seen. It's almost this very obviously and self-consciously brash and offensive, where you're just like, it's the same tone as the show. It's just got this like, yes, I'm being very offensive. What's wrong with? I don't understand.
Right. Well, I love playing characters who are really dumb but think they're the smartest guy in the room. That's really fun for me, and that's sort of what that character was. Although, sort of the umbrella for all the Daily Show characters,
Yeah. Well, you've done some other really interesting work. Hot Tub Time Machine, being one of those. Anybody,
I was in that one.
Anybody a fan? That was a very strange movie, and I think like a lot of your work, it's just weird, but in the best way. How much were you part of that at the beginning, or did they bring you on as just to act? I couldn't remember if you wrote that at all.
No, I didn't. Although it was when we were writing it, it was really kind of right as you go. But when we were shooting it, rather. But no, it was. I got the script. I was shooting this little indie movie, this very important indie film, and I got the script. My agent sent me the script, and it said, Hot Tub Time Machine on the spine. And of course, I reacted appropriately to that. And I was working with Sam Rockwell at the time, a very respected indie actor. He's, good as, if not better than, he's the De Niro of our time, And I showed it to him, and I was like, I found our next project together. And so I was making fun of it, and then I opened the title page, and the title page said, Hot Tub Time Machine, based on the incredibly true story. And I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. Got it. I'm in.
Done.
And that script was really crazy. It was a nutty, not based in any sort of reality whatsoever. And they got these other guys on to rewrite it, Anders and Morris, who were who brought a little bit of heart and a little bit of reality. to it to sort of ground it a little bit.
Oh,
But-
man, that was a trip. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It's a fun Friday night popcorn movie.
Yeah, not a Sunday morning sort of.
No, not like
hangover
Children's
movie.
Hospital, which
No.
I like to start off start my days
Exactly.
with. When we were actually trying to bring you in here, and by the way, again, we've got a little bit more time, so feel free to come up and ask questions. If we get kicked out, we'll end at the hour. Otherwise, it did say an afternoon with Rob Corddry, so
Yeah.
hope you've got nothing to do. No, I heard you were like really, really excited to come to Google.
Very excited,
What
yeah.
was behind that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just, I'm a, I mean, God, I hesitate to say I'm a tech geek in front of this crowd because I'm like, it's like a guy that flies paper airplanes saying to a jet pilot that he's a pilot. But, it's just something that I really geek out about. I love, computers and I love the internet. I love also, I really kind of am fascinated with, as I said before, productivity and like the way people and corporations work. I'm really fascinated with corporate culture, and this is sort of like, I don't know, I guess I'd consider it like the pinnacle of this sort of alternative corporate culture working really well. So yeah, I just really...
Yeah. Even though you've never actually, it doesn't sound like from your career, have you ever actually worked at...
I've never heard of Google before. No, I'm
Google,
a Bing
it's-
user through and through.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Straight Bing.
You've never worked a corporate job. Straight to the veins.
Yeah.
But you've never worked a corporate job before.
I have
right?
worked corporate. I've worked
okay.
tons of corporate jobs.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, coming out, before I started making money at this, I had 100 crazy jobs, terrible jobs in cubicles, like banging my head against the whole culture and knowing that I just wanted out. My philosophy was always that I would only stay at a job for 1 year, because I've always thought if you have a plan B, if you have something to fall back on, rather, you will fall back on it. So I didn't want to get locked in anywhere. I was the assistant to the co-general counsel at Goldman Sachs for a year to the day. Crazy job, making a ton of money. Like, what is happening here? And at a year, I was like, all right, been here too long. I put my feet up on the desk. Out the next day. They asked me not to come back. So,
Well, at least you went out with style.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, that rounds us off to the end of the hour. So I'll go ahead and again, cut it off here for the video. Thanks again, authors at Google, Rob Corddry. Children's Hospital, Thursday nights at midnight on Cartoon Network
on Adult Swim, yeah.
And seasons 1 and 2, now available for purchase. Thanks, everyone, for Rob Corddry.
Thank you.